Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. The World Trade Organization rules against the United States in the row over Made in China labels. TV actor Mat Yeung begins 18 days behind bars after losing his appeal. And the chief executive wins praise on his maiden duty visit to Beijing. The United States insists that Hong Kong exports will still have to be labeled as Made in China. The defiant stance came after the World Trade Organization ruled that the U.S. had violated trade regulations. Janice Lowe reports.
The World Trade Organization has ruled that the United States was wrong to order exports from Hong Kong be labeled as Made in China. Former U.S. President Donald Trump demanded the label change 2 years ago in response to the enactment of the national security law in Hong Kong. But the WTO said Trump's move violated the General Agreement on Goods and Tariffs. A panel of 3 experts did not agree with Washington that the order was necessary to protect essential security interests. Although WTO members, including the U.S., were highly concerned about human rights in Hong Kong, the experts said the situation had not escalated to the point where it was an emergency to qualify for an exemption. The panel urged the U.S. to conform with the trade rules. Hong Kong's Commerce Minister said Washington's labeling requirement confused both customers and manufacturers. But its impact on Hong Kong's trade was minimal, amounting to only $7.4 billion.
The trade between Hong Kong and United States, the total export is only about 0.1% of the total export from Hong Kong. The whole spirit is to uphold the status and position of Hong Kong Special Administration Region in the WTO as a separate custom territory.
Adam Hodge, the spokesman for the U.S. Trade Representative, said the United States strongly objected to the ruling and stressed that it will not scrap the labeling order. Janice Lowe, HKIBC.
TV actor Mat Yeung has begun serving an 18-day jail term for careless driving. He went straight to prison after his appeal against the sentence was dismissed. Macy Mock has the story.
Actor Lam Ming-lok, better known as Mat Yeung, went to the High Court this morning to hear the outcome of his appeal against his 18-day jail sentence. Back in 2020, his car crashed into a curb in the mid-levels. He pleaded guilty to careless driving and illegally tinting his car window. Yeung was given a jail term, fined $2,000, and disqualified from driving for 2 years. But he felt that the penalty was severe and filed an appeal. Today, the High Court rejected the appeal. Judge Johnny Chan said the assumption of the lower court that Yeung was under influence of alcohol was reasonable. Police smelled alcohol on the actor during the arrest. While in hospital, he was unable to control his emotions and was semi-unconscious. Chan said there was irrefutable evidence that Yeung drove carelessly. And by pleading guilty, reversing the plea, and then pleading guilty again, the actor showed that his level of remorse was average and was not enough to merit a suspended jail sentence. Chan said based on Yeung's driving attitude, the consequences could have been severe had he crashed into other cars. The judge added that a light penalty could not be given, even if there had been no casualties. The 41-year-old actor was sent to prison immediately after his appeal was dismissed. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
Premier Li Keqiang has praised Chief Executive John Lee for his efforts in dealing with key issues. The SAR leader is on his first duty visit to Beijing and is expected to meet President Xi Jinping tomorrow. Janice Lowe reports.
Premier Li Keqiang met Chief Executive John Lee this afternoon in Zhongnanhai, the headquarters of the Chinese Communist Party. Also present were Vice Premier Han Zheng, who supervises SAR affairs, Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director Xia Baolong, and Luo Huining, Director of the Central Government's Liaison Office in Hong Kong. There were no handshakes, but Lee removed his face mask during the photo shoot, while the premier didn't wear one the whole time. Lee acknowledged and praised the chief executive for his achievements in resolving deep-seated social and economic issues in the past 6 months. He said Beijing will continue to give its full support to the SAR in implementing the one country, two systems principle. The SAR leader thanked Lee for his continuous care and support towards Hong Kong, adding that his administration will continue to work hard in developing the economy and improving people's livelihood. Lee is expected to meet President Xi Jinping tomorrow before wrapping up his 4-day duty visit on Saturday. Janice Low, HKIBC.
After a decade-long operation, Australia has finally managed to extradite a drug lord who is dubbed Asia's El Chapo. Tse Lop has been fighting hard to avoid extradition following his arrest in the Netherlands last year. Raymond Young reports.
Donning a grey hoodie and sweatpants, a handcuffed Tse Lop was escorted by Australian federal agents as he passed through immigration at Melbourne Airport. Dubbed Asia's El Chapo after the Mexican drug lord Joaquin Guzman, the Guangdong native who spent his early years in Hong Kong now faces life behind bars down under. The Canadian national ran a global trafficking ring known as The Company and was alleged to be responsible for up to 70% of narcotics entering Australia at one time. The 59-year-old was arrested in January last year during transit in Amsterdam.
There are a number of appeal processes that he was afforded consistent with the Dutch laws. So he was traversing through those appeal processes, and then those appeal processes were exhausted, which enabled us to then extradite him back here today.
Authorities believe Tse is part of a syndicate which conspired to traffic $3 million worth of methamphetamine a decade ago.
Being able to arrest and extradite such a senior figure, the head of what we allege to be the head of a very significant syndicate, is a huge achievement for the AFP and for the Australian public.
Tse was taken to a court in Melbourne where he was assisted by a Cantonese interpreter. He did not apply for bail, and the case has been adjourned until February. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington to put his case for more military aid. His first foreign visit since Russia invaded his country comes as Congress prepares to vote on an additional $45 billion in aid for Ukraine. 10 months into Russia's war in Ukraine, U.S. President Joe Biden and other political leaders welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Washington to put on a united front for the world to see and to give more aid.
Today, I'm announcing the next tranche of our security assistance to Ukraine. $1.85 billion package of security assistance that includes both direct transfers of equipment that Ukraine needs, as well as contracts to supply ammunition Ukraine will need in the months ahead for its artillery, its tanks, and its rocket launchers. The American people know that if we stand by in the face of such blatant attacks on liberty and democracy and the core principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, the world would surely face worse consequences.
Zelensky conveyed his appreciation for what has been given, but pushed for more help to defeat Russia, describing military aid as an investment in democracy. The visit comes as Republicans, some of whom are reluctant to keep dishing aid to Ukraine, are set to take control of the House of Representatives next month and are due to vote on a $1.7 trillion budget, of which $45 billion is for Ukraine. Russia has accused the United States of provocation by stepping up military aid to Ukraine and warned that it could lead to unimaginable consequences. In a speech to military officers in Moscow, President Vladimir Putin said unnamed third countries are trying to undermine Russia. He said Moscow cannot be blamed for the conflict in Ukraine, which he called a brotherly nation. In a visit to an exhibition displaying Russia's latest weapons, Putin promised to give the military whatever it needs to fight in Ukraine. Hong Kong stocks hit a two-week high on mainland plans to deepen equity reforms. These include expanding the Hong Kong Stock Connect scheme. The China Securities Regulatory Commission also aims to strengthen cooperation with capital markets in the SAR. Renewed investor confidence pushed the Hang Seng Index 2.7% higher. Video sharing website Bilibili jumped 9.6% as tech shares advanced. Sportswear maker Li Ning sprinted to a 7.4% gain. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed up 518 points. Top 10 active stocks, Tencent was up $12.80, and Alibaba was up $3.45. Tracker Fund was up 50 cents, and Li Ning was up $4.65. Forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.28 and Canadian dollar at 5.72. And over in Europe, the London FTSE is up 26 points. Club football has returned, with Manchester United cruising into the last 8 of the English League Cup, while third-tier Charlton humbled the big boys. Raymond Young reports.
With the World Cup over, stars like Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro returned to club duty as Manchester United hosted Burnley in the 4th round of the English League Cup. While Vincent Kompany has enjoyed a superb first season as manager of the Championship side, Burnley was still far from challenging the Premiership giants. Aaron Wan-Bissaka raced to collect a long ball, and his cross was easily bundled home by Christian Eriksen. But United were only lucky to stay ahead when a messy sequence by keeper Martin Druboka saw the ball loop towards their own net before it was cleared by Casemiro off the line. Rashford put the match out of reach in the second half with a classy solo effort. United are into the quarterfinals with a convincing 2-0 win. They are joined by Nottingham Forest, who reached the last 8 for the first time in 28 years. Brennan Johnson opened the account from the spot before Blackburn Rovers levelled the score from a set piece. But second half goals from Jesse Lingard, Taiwo Awoniyi, and a second from Johnson in stoppage time sent Forest through in emphatic fashion. Third-tier Charlton Athletic played out an enthralling finish against Brighton and Hove Albion from the Premiership. In what was the only 4th round tie so far to be decided on penalties after full-time ended goalless, the first 3 takers were all denied by the woodwork. Solomon March could have won it for Brighton, but hit it well above the bar. Sam Lavelle then completed the upset for Charlton, now the only team outside the Premier League to remain in the cup. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
The winter solstice today coincided with the lifting of a customer capacity cap for bars. But business was relatively slow in Lan Kwai Fong, although Chinese restaurants did a roaring trade. Macy Mock has the story.
The 75% capacity limit for bars were scrapped today, and customers no longer need to show their self-administered tests before entering. But the relaxation of restrictions did not trigger an immediate rush, although bars are hopeful that business will pick up over the Christmas holiday.
會多大約3成至4成嘅生意左右呢。
Jackie, who represents a bar in Lan Kwai Fong, expects sales to jump by 30 to 40% over the festive period, as patrons will no longer be inconvenienced by anti-COVID restrictions.
It does make a bit of difference. On the spur of the moment, we can have a drink without having to do the rat test. It's getting better. It's getting back to normal. It's getting back to pre-COVID times.
It was a different story for Chinese restaurants, which were packed for the winter solstice. With more people deciding to celebrate in restaurants, there were fewer shoppers in wet markets buying ingredients for family reunion meals at home. This vendor said fewer chickens were sold as many of her regular customers had chosen to eat out. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. Staying fine and very dry tomorrow, with temperatures between 13 and 19 degrees. Expect the pleasant conditions to persist over Christmas. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Good night.